Hello, Ryan here, aka Mac, and welcome. Today I am going to be running through the latest monthly report for the Persistent Universe. As always, a huge thank you to all of my patrons and channel members. Thank you so much for the continued support, it is truly appreciated. And before we begin, the TOBII Eye Tracker 5 is back on sale at 20% off this time, so if you have been after one, now is a great time to pick one up. And using that link below will take you to that deal, plus it will provide my channel with a direct kickback, so thank you so much in advance if you choose to do so. So as usual, this is a monster of a report. It's 10 pages in fact, which probably mean nothing to you because you don't know what system I use. But sit back, relax, get a drink, and let's begin. Now for the AI features team, they worked on a combination of fixes and new functionality. The team also solved problems with the tactical query system, plus a lot of work was done on AI groups, which essentially allow NPCs to share perception data between each other within the same group. Now this is going to be a great addition when implemented. Trying to prohibit the flow of this information between NPCs in whatever ways you can would be interesting. And it was only the other day that I was at Astor's clearing on Microtech, and a friend of mine was walking around with his weapon drawn, and many of the NPCs, as soon as they saw him with the weapon drawn, would draw their weapons and sort of back away, moving to cover. They didn't fire, they just pointed their weapons at them, backed away, and hid in cover to see what they did. And when he put his weapon away, eventually they did too. So there's definitely more AI coming into the 324 build. Anyway, for the AI tech team, they continue to work on the AI vision and movement system for server meshing, and this allows NPCs to transition from one server to another without losing their previous context. And I suspect once 4.0 is released, the ability for NPCs to travel around the verse physically will be possible, both on foot and in flight, moving between meshes and so forth, which will be of great importance for many areas of the game. Also for the tech team, various optimizations were made, including the observable and vision components, and to collision avoidance when NPCs fly ships and drive ground vehicles. Now for the character art team, they began work on the utility armor, and also progressed with specialist armors while supporting requests for the character customizer and working through the art debt for loot items. I would love to know what utility and specialist armors are currently in the works right now. I suspect there might be a firefighting suit. That would be a useful one with this fire hazard system on the way, but there are many other required armors that Cloud Imperium want for all different professions, be that industrial professions, combat professions, and everything in between. Now the character concept art team explored new designs for fauna, while the hair team progressed with additional hairstyles. Now I am really looking forward to seeing what the next creatures are. I know there is going to be a creature feature inside StarCitizen scheduled within the next 6 weeks, I think. And as mentioned previously, they will show us some new upcoming animals. My guess would be things like the Kazi grazers, as these space cows are expected in 4.0, but we could also see progress on the space whales for the Crusader planet, maybe even the Pyro crab. Could that be coming in 4.0 with the introduction of Pyro? And the elusive Boreal Stalker that we have not heard about in a long while. But what else will there be? They don't want to show us everything, they do want to wait for us to discover many of these creatures ourselves, in caves, maybe asteroid bases, space stations, and planetside. Cannot wait. And I suspect the Boreal Stalker might be one of these creatures that they want us to discover for ourselves as well. So as you're walking around the forests of Microtech, maybe at Astor's clearing, you might bump into the Microtech Yeti. Now for the ship art team, there is only a small segment. It says they work towards new milestones for the vehicles currently in production, including the RSI Polaris, the Zeus, and 3 unannounced ships. Now the Polaris we know will be coming around IAE time, around November, and the Zeus ES and CL are expected to release for Alpha 4.0. No idea when the Zeus MR is coming, but what else could we see? I do hope for a medium Argo salvager, and also some form of flatbed ground vehicle for hauling goods on, which would be particularly handy in 324 in fact. Now the team also kicked off production on 3 new vehicles alongside 2 new concepts. So as we know, we have the Polaris, the 2 Zeus being the CL and the ES in the works, along with 3 others yet to be announced, and now they're also saying they began work on 3 new vehicles and concepted 2 more vehicles, which is quite a lot to be in the works. Likely we will see some of these revealed and released potentially for Alpha 324. I'm guessing this new Saber vehicle is one of them. 2 we know for Alpha 4.0, and likely more that we don't know for Alpha 4.0. And then we have CitizenCon, some coming for then, the IAE with the Polaris, and maybe some others as well. Now, for the core gameplay team, they progressed with a wide variety of features, one being the charge and drain feature, adding network support for the wider feature itself. They also worked on bringing unpowered items back to life. They've implemented weapon rollback, not sure what that is, and supported UI implementation. Now, very happy to see some of this stuff come along, like we saw with the fire extinguisher on Inside Star Citizen recently, being able to place it back in its holder to have it then recharge. And charge and drain will apply to any electrical item that uses a battery, be that tools, weapons, or batteries themselves, on ships of course, but also energy weapons as well. Now, progress was also made on the overheat mechanic, improving ways to tune heat values, and moving forwards, all energy weapons will have the potential to overheat. And this will have a big impact on choosing what loadout you want to bring, similarly to how it's handled with ship weapons, with energy weapons offering better longevity but having to manage your heat, maybe having to recharge some of them versus ballistics, and maybe something to consider when visiting hot planets as well, if they're going to start overheating because of the temperature of the planet or moon. Now, tasks were completed for light amplification, adding control hints to toggle it on and off on the various supported scopes, while bugs were fixed for the fire extinguisher and quantum travel for server meshing. Now, we did see a night vision sight on Inside Star Citizen recently. If you blinked, you would have missed it. It was during the contested zones B-roll. But getting them working with weapon sights is the first step to rolling out this as a bigger system where we can have night vision on our visors, on our helmets, for tools, on your HUD. So great to see it starting to come along. Now, for the MFD rework, comms list, hail target, and comcall functionality was added, and work also began on weapon groups to allow players to switch between group presets. Now, the group presets for your MFDs is something that we heard about at CitizenCon, and will really help to expand on flight of all types, being able to switch between sort of setup presets depending on the situation at hand, and having them persist between sessions as well, which will be a real help. Now, next up, we have jump points, which says that they have made significant progress on, much of which we heard or saw on Inside Star Citizen and heard about on Star Citizen Live recently, like providing the ability to define exit locations, which will also have a physics force to push players away from the exits. I guess that's another part of countering jump point exit camping. But also, players will now get pulled into the tunnel one by one when making the jump, which I think is going to feel really fun. Feeling your ship just get dragged in, knowing that you are then committed, and when you exit, you will be in an entirely new system. Pretty crazy to think about. Improvements were also made to tunnel generation, with the tunnels now being less prone to self-intersection at corners. Updates were also made to the jump UI, including icon and color changes, text fade in and out, contextual nav points, and general heads-up displays fading in and out depending on the approach angle. And I think my mind is probably going to be quite blown when I travel through a jump point for the first time, coming out of the Stanton system, coming into the Pyro system. I can't wait to see that. Now, progress was also made on engineering gameplay, including making fully distorted items consume resources despite not being functional, which makes sense. It is a trade-off. Well, not a trade-off, it's a punishment for allowing yourself to take distorted damage, I guess. And I think this engineering system is going to be one of the next episodes we see on Inside Star Citizen. Can't remember which one it's going to be, but learning more about that and live support will be really interesting. Now, support was added for master modes, with quantum drives now going fully offline in SEM mode, and shields going fully offline in nav mode. I'm not sure what that means, because I thought this is what they already did. They might be referring to the regen pool, like maybe that's completely gone, or there was a bug stopping this from happening, but we will have to test it out and see. And in fact, we did hear there's going to be a lot of big changes coming to master mode soon, so there's plenty more to learn about. Now, the engineering screens and MFDs progressed as well, with tasks being completed on power presets and the assignment UI. So happy to hear that engineering presets are getting worked on. This should mean that we can switch to a default preset, be that stealth mode, auxiliary, full power, and so on, and likely tune these presets to be exactly how we want them so that when we switch, they go into our more customized preset or just the default, which will be a great addition, hopefully coming around the same time as the updates to radars, scanners, and signature system, so stealth will actually be possible, which could be 4.0. Now, life support and fuel information was added, while the power display was improved as well, and it will be great having things like life support to monitor, ensuring that everything is running tickety-boo, or using it to tackle fires or borders. But all those times you've done a quantum jump and just been completely bored, sat in the chair waiting to get to where you're going, soon we'll have the Galactopedia to read, soon we will have engineering and life support, and one day cargo information as well. Lots to do on board. I think you'll wish that your jumps were actually longer. Now, speaking of the radar and scanning feature, this also saw progress, with Delta signatures getting added to the HUD and MFDs, and moving the jammer from the signature system to the radar component for easier integration with other systems. Now, the Delta signatures are signatures that your vehicle emit when they do things like radar ping, or switching between nav mode and SEM, kind of giving off a minor emission that can be potentially spotted if someone is, I suppose, actively using their radar or their scanner searching for stuff. So it is something you'll need to consider if, whatever the situation you're in, if you're going to switch between modes and you're trying to stay stealthy, you might have to think twice. Now, more information was also added to the Charge Scan UI, including maximum held charge, a notification when attempting to scan during cooldown, and fade out and collapse animations as well, with the overall HUD getting polished and decluttered. For example, nameplates only show for targeted ships, distance will only appear for targeted and pinned ships, target information shows for scanned targets, and how long target info is shown for was decreased. Now, this is great news. Tidying up the HUD will be much appreciated, especially with all of that UI everywhere. I do hope that one day we can see a kind of a toggle on and off for the AR UI, like names of your friends or in your party, ship markers, mission markers, location markers. If I could have a button that I could press when I want to see it and press when I don't, I would really appreciate that, because the game world is so beautiful, and as I'm moving around and I'm looking up and checking out the environment, if I'm in a group, all I can see is just players' names everywhere, and ship names. They're much bigger than the actual ship themselves, and you don't see the ship. And the same goes for the headlights on ships. For some reason, as the ships are flying around now, they have this weird circular glow, like a bubble, and it looks kind of ridiculous when there's lots of ships on screen. Plus, you cannot see the ship, you just see this big bright light, and it kind of looks weird, so hopefully they'll remove that. Anyway, that was the rant over. Audio signature emissions were added as well, while the devs began implementing FPS ping counterplay, with players being detected and highlighted if they FPS ping, depending on various factors. Now, this again was probably part of this Delta signature, where using something like a ping would give off a small signature that others can see or detect. Also, great to see audible signatures getting added. I believe this is by way of decibels, so having a audible signature that you can hear. And when it comes to FPS, we have heard that being able to mask your FPS decibel signature or audible signature would be possible if you stand next to something loud, the way that it propagates down corridors and things. And in fact, talking of audio, it's been a while since we've heard about this realistic audio for flight. I wonder if we'll see that come along soon. Now, the new vehicle Enunciator System was added, which supports power, weapons, thrusters, shields, proximity, radar, quantum, missiles, coolers, and shots. And it would be nice if we could toggle which ones we want on and off. I know the Enunciator System can be kind of toggled to low, medium, or high, or off, depending on how much information you want to be told. I actually quite like it on, especially for proximity when I'm coming into landing, but many others might not. Now, for the mission Refactor, the team added the option to spawn objectives at random points near planets, both inside and outside the atmosphere, alongside the ability to attach objectives to players being added as well. Now, that's going to be handy for very many various reasons in terms of mission locations, but I do find it pretty interesting, as we can see with these new hauling missions, that they have built using this new mission refactor, which seems to be working pretty well, as the missions will pick various locations to having players travelling and hauling goods. And with 324, we have also seen about 40 plus, I think there's like 43 new locations planet-side across Hurston and Microtech and all the moons, which are the FOB-style buildings, or the forward operating bases that we saw on Star Citizen Live, which essentially could act as new locations for any manner of missions, as more mission types get generated using this system. Using those locations would be great. And I have a feeling we are going to see a ton more missions with a lot more diversity coming along soon as well. In fact, there's more about that in this video. Plus, where it says objectives getting added to players, that could have a lot of use cases as well on both sides of the law, from bounties, knowing where your bounty is, or tracking your bounty, putting a tracker on your bounty, to maybe even delivering or providing a service to a particular player. Now, support was also given to actual missions, it says, with various bugs being fixed and improvements being made to the back end of hauling contracts. Further support was given to Blockade Runner, while various issues with the UI were fixed, and the Contracts Manager Abandon button behavior was extended to hauling missions as well. So, a lot of good stuff in there. Firstly, bug fixing many missions we have now is super important, as well as quality of life for all of them, getting them working much more consistently. Now, for the economy team, they progressed with their tasks for Pyro, including the outer rings. Not sure what that is meant by the outer rings, if that means maybe asteroid belts. And for the economy team, that's the only thing I can think of. Maybe there's much more to be had out there, looting, resource gathering. They also worked on a refactor that will allow them to create and modify shops in a more scalable manner. And for cargo, balancing was done to the price and time of auto-loading to give players the choice between manually loading or paying for convenience and speed. In fact, many times throughout 324's PTU patches, they have been adjusting and balancing the costs and the times with this auto-loading stuff. And I guess that they're probably not going to be done yet either. It'll take a bit of time. A balance pass was also done on vehicle components, including new life support systems and jump drives. And it is going to be really interesting in 4.0 when we actually have to buy or loot and trade components as ours will degrade or break. Really looking forward to collecting every single component I find in 324 and then storing them inside my hangar for either sale, trade, or use. I'm such a loot goblin. Now, finally, for the economy team, the developers continued to develop their understanding of player profiles to ensure that each career is profitable according to the long-term vision of the economy. Now, that whole sentence is of major importance. So many things in the alpha right now are so out of whack, with some missions allowing players to earn tens of millions of UEC in less than an hour, while others earning barely anything. And although it may seem like a great idea that you can earn 20 million UEC in an hour, it really doesn't help the game in any way, and does make everything else pointless. Having actual balance across the board when it comes to professions of all types, with the varying factors, paying more or less, like distance, danger, and so on, is going to make the verse feel so much more interesting, with players pursuing alternative work instead of just doing the same min-max stuff over and over again, making it feel boring. And I think from 324 onwards, with all of these changes to hauling, I suspect the grind will become much more interesting and rewarding as well. Now, next up, we have the in-game branding team, who said they continued wrapping up tasks for jump points and the Pyro system, polishing content and ensuring everything fits the environment. Moving on to mission design, they continued working on unannounced content alongside a suite that uses individual features to create a complex form of repair missions, and these identify key structures that would be used to ensure a location stays up and running and made them breakable. So there's a lot in that paragraph, and it all sounds pretty interesting. Firstly, I know that there are vehicle restoration missions coming, in which players are tasked to go to a scrapyard to get a non-functioning ship back up and running again into a saleable state, it said, likely using components and gathering RMC found at the location. But here it mentions that a key structure would be used as a location to stay up and running, making it breakable. Now, using information gathered from cargo gameplay, work began on resource gathering, with the current focus being on emergent gameplay that pulls resources from the verse, starting with mining. For example, if a location requests a specific resource, the player can choose how to acquire it, be that mining, buying it, or piracy. Now, it is great to finally hear that this sort of stuff is coming along. Having companies like Shuben put out a mission requesting X amount of, let's say, quartz, for example, and then the player can decide where and how to get that. And if you know of a location where quartz is in abundance, you can go and get it, or you may have to search for it. Or, of course, you could buy it if the payout of the mission is greater than the cost of buying and hauling that quartz, or if you just want the reputation, of course. And then when scanning, map markers, and the trade and exchange of information like data comes into the game, having found the location of various minerals, you could store that information and sell that off to those who want it. So you could essentially just trade in resource location information. That would be kind of cool. But yeah, great to hear this stuff is coming along. And alongside this, progress was also made on the mission system Refactor, as we heard, which will change how missions are offered and future-proof the wider system. It also creates an opportunity to fix legacy issues and folder structures and reassesses existing missions. So as I say, I feel like the missions are gonna explode, and if the hauling missions are anything to go by in 3.2.4, we will see hundreds of mining missions as well, having miners moving around all over the verse, gathering resources, haulers going back and forth from one place to the next, creating trade lanes, pirates trying to take advantage of that, security fighting them off and protecting those players. It is almost time for the game to massively expand to being this emergent sandbox that we have all been waiting for, with players everywhere doing all sorts of stuff, helping others, and so much more. And this is before we even get that dynamic economy in. When that comes in, it's just going to make more sense. And I am so excited to see this stuff roll out. Now, finally, for the mission design team, it says they'll also be able to implement new features into the mission system to allow greater control and create more MMO-style features and content. So moving on to the narrative team. They continue to support development of Alpha 4.0, including a mixture of mission text, brainstorming ideas for additional mission content, and delving into some of the various locations being placed by the environment and design teams. The narrative designers spent time overseeing the presence of social AI in various locations, making sure that these areas are not only marked up correctly, but the general vibe and feeling of the area is accurately represented. And I think it has been said that they're aiming to create more realistic AI around environments to kind of bring those locations to life, which it'll be very interesting to see how far they can take it to make that feel that way, being able to blend in with an AI population. Also, an initiative was started within the team to overhaul some of the social spaces to better reflect the intended tone of that location, which I should have read that before I said what I said. Now, on the Star Citizen 1.0 front, Narrative worked closely with design to define mission providers and aspects of reputation. Now, personally, I really hope that we see generic NPC mission givers. The handcrafted mission givers we have are cool, but they require such a lot of effort and resources to not just create, but also maintain, and there isn't a lot of replayability to their missions either. But for generic NPCs, say a random NPC at a settlement just walking around, or a resident there, or a shopkeeper, just requesting you to bring them something. Like the shopkeeper could request 5 C-54 guns, or a random NPC resident could request 10 Heart of the Woods mushrooms, and then you need to go and gather those items, returning it to them for a reward and reputation, or maybe some discount. That would be something that I would love to do regularly, making it feel like I'm going to these places just to see what missions are available, making these locations feel more lived in. So hopefully we will see this kind of thing come along before 1.0, but post 1.0 is fine as well. Now, next up we have the online technology team, who spent a lot of time working with other teams on the freight kiosk's search bar, alongside optimizing the hangar and the shard stow mechanics, and that search bar is brilliant. The team working on potential mission and marker system features for Alpha 4.0 visited the Manchester studio to collab with the gameplay teams to ensure the seamless integration of these upcoming features, and in prep for 4.0, the online services team began developing a new player trade service which says will enable players to transfer funds amongst themselves without being subject to the same game server's authority, paving the way for server meshing. Now, hearing this, I really hope that this player trade service will make trading not just money between players, but items between players more streamlined as well, as that option is becoming more and more possible in-game right now as you fly around looting locations, bumping into players, offering them stuff that you have to sell, and with hangars now offering the option to display items to other players to make an offer on, let's hope that this system becomes much more possible. The team have also been finalising the social services Refactor, which has been an extensive project of which online services have been working on for the past few months and is now ready to go live, marking a significant milestone for the team. Not too sure exactly what this does. I have read about it, but I can't remember offhand what it is. So if someone knows, please do put it in the comments. For the Hex tool, the team worked on new core features, with the main goal of this tool being to provide better management of roles and permissions, streamline workflows between different tools, and enable the ability to perform bulk actions. And finally, the team is also improving other internal tools such as the error reporting pipeline with the implementation of new technical architecture. Now, for the UI team, UI designers and artists worked on the in-game visuals and functionality for the Resource Network UI, which is the engineering screens, and completed the final polishing tasks for jump points. Now, really happy to hear that the actual UI artists are mocking this stuff up, as building blocks is certainly a great tool to help empower the developers of a certain feature to get that feature out the door and into players' hands quicker by allowing them to build the UI for it, but it does often lead to a lot of visually poor and unintuitive UI, as it's not their area of expertise. So for something like the engineering system, having actual UI designers and artists working on the UI should mean it's going to be in a pretty decent state right out of the gate. Not likely perfect, but still good. And looking at the latest UI for the engineering screens, it does look pretty nice. And that clearly won't be finished. Now, for the vehicles, the UI team replaced the old Flash MFDs and set up the new HUDs, resulting in a cleaner and less cluttered flight experience. And again, we have seen a lot of this in the recent Inside Star Citizens, and they do look very nice. And finally, for the UI team, the team's tech programmers worked on performance improvements to speed up the frame rate of various parts of the UI. And I have noticed with certain UI elements, the frame rate does suffer. When we first got the new star map, that was a big cause of that. But particularly with the MobiGlass, when opening the new huge list of possible hauling missions, hundreds of them, it does take a good few seconds for the MobiGlass to expand. So hopefully that will improve. Now finally, we have the visual effects team, who continued to support several effect-heavy features, including jump points and dynamic fire, which we have seen on Inside Star Citizen recently, and it looks beautifully scary. The team also continued to work on the acidic caves, which are coming in 4.0, and completed their tasks for the RSI Zeus, which are also coming in 4.0, and another unnamed vehicle. Plus, tasks kicked off for 2 new weapons. So again, a new unnamed vehicle with the downstream team being the VFX is likely one that's on the cusp of releasing. Could be the Sabre racing ship maybe? Plenty of sneaky vehicles in the works it seems, and with events like 4.0, CitizenCon, the IAE coming up, or the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo, there is plenty to reveal, so get your wallets ready. Anyway, that was the most recent monthly report for all of the work that went on in the month of July. So much is going on in all areas, especially missions. Very excited to see them expand on with this new refactored system, bringing so much more interesting open-ended gameplay for players to use their skill, their knowledge, their experience, not to mention how much that's just going to play into this organic gameplay that I like. But with that said, if you do enjoy my videos, please do consider subscribing, helping the channel to grow. We are fast approaching 70,000. Come and hang out over at twitch.tv/SuperMacBrother. You are all more than welcome over there. The link is below. We're playing some 3-2-4 right now while chilling out and chatting about Star Citizen. If you are new to the game, great place to ask your questions. And if you are a veteran returning, also a good place to hear and see what has changed. Hit the thumbs up if you don't mind, it does the channel a big favour, and tick that notification bell if you would like to be notified when my videos go live. Again, a huge thank you to my patrons and channel members. Cannot do it without you guys, so thank you so much. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.